Hi everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Mash Bill. This is a video where I pair a bourbon and a board game together, or a whiskey, or a rum, or any type of spirits that I think go well with board games. My name is Matt, the Dice Chucker, and that's where you can find me on Instagram, by the way. And let's dive into this, shall we? Today we're taking a look at Bulleit Bourbon. This is often called Frontier Whiskey. Now, Bulleit Bourbon was originally made in the 1830s to the 1860s. The creator of Bulleit was making it with 2/3 rye and 1/3 corn, which, Matt, you told us last week that you have to make bourbon with 50% corn. We'll get to that. But we always notice that Bulleit always says high rye whiskey. Now, a rye whiskey will generally not have the same sweetness as a bourbon. And we're going to take a look today and see if we get that in the bourbon as well. But by 1860, the man making Bulleit bourbon stopped, and it kind of lay dormant until 1987, when the recipe was brought back, and they made their rye whiskey. Hey, how are we doing today? And they made their rye whiskey, which is the original bill with the 2/3 rye, but they also made a bourbon. I'm going to have to hold it over here. He doesn't really care for bourbon. He likes brandy, though. I don't know why. See, he's moving away from me. He doesn't like it. Anyway, so when they went back and took a look at the recipe that they wanted to make, they knew they had to abide by the rules and regulations of what to be called bourbon. And so they made a bourbon here. A lot of people really do enjoy this one. Let's take a look and see how it tastes. So, right off the bat, you notice it has that typical bourbon coloration. It's got a nice reddish copper look to it. This one isn't as deep of a color as it should be for a bourbon, but that's okay, because as long as, like I said, has 51% corn, usually pretty good. We've never talked about this before. When I see people sniffing bourbon, they just hold their nose right over the glass and they go, oh. What they're getting is a lot of the alcohol right in there. So what you want to do to really feel the flavors of the bourbon is to just kind of hold the glass to your lips open and kind of breathe it in, and then you'll be able to get some of the flavors there. There is a better way to do it. I can't really show or explain it over a video. You'd have to come on down and see me and I can explain it better. But one thing that is noticeable about Bulleit is it does have a little bit of a fruity taste. Again, getting a lot of pears today along with the oak. And that overall sweetness of a bourbon. So it is present in this one. So let's take a look. And it does go down really easy. It does have that bourbon taste. For a whiskey that's missing most of its color, for a bourbon that's missing most of its color, it really does have a great bourbon taste. Like I said, you'll see here on the bottle and on the label, it says Frontier Whiskey. So I'm trying to think of a board game I would put with a Frontier Whiskey. We don't have a lot of Western games in our house, but one that's a lot of fun that we've played often is... Oh, sorry, buddy. Dice Town. Dice Town is a great dice rolling game. You're using poker dice to activate locations, and you're trying to get gold, you're trying to get money, you're trying to get victory point cards by the dice you roll. You're always, rolling one and picking at least one dice. If you want to pick more than one dice than you rolled, you have to pay money into the bank, and that's money that someone else might be able to scoop up later. And then you have Town Hall, where you can pick up some land. You've got, I'm looking at the back of the box here to make sure I got it all correct. You can go to the saloon, where you can take cards from other people's hands. The general store gives you basic cards. They might be victory points, they might be special abilities you can do. And then you have the sheriff, which allows you to take the first player token, and that's worth points at the end of the game as well. There's even a space at the very end where if you got nothing, because only one person can activate these places, you get something from the dice you rolled. This is a really great introduction to dice rolling games, as far as like picking a dice and rolling again and seeing what you get. A lot of people love the poker dice. A lot of people love the sound of just the dice being shaken in the cup and then slam the cup down on the table. It's really got a great feel for it. And if you've got the cows expansion, it was fun. I don't think it's necessary. So if you're upset that you can't get the cows expansion, I wouldn't be too concerned. It's fun. It's a great addition, but it's not necessary, like some of the other expansions to both Ludovic Montblanc and Bruno Cathala's games. So, while there is no whiskey, I looked for a good Frontier game that had whiskey as a resource. I couldn't find one, at least not in our collection. Anyway, this is a great family game that I'm pairing with a bourbon, but it's also a great intro game to the hobby. So if you've never done any board gaming before and you're here for the bourbon, take a look into this game. You might be pleasantly surprised. And if you're here for the board games, you'll be pleasantly surprised to hear that I do recommend Bulleit Bourbon as a great starter bourbon. There are quite a few that I would tell you to pick up, and you're not spending a lot of money to get it. And so it's not going to hit you hard. Like a few weeks ago, I recommended Jefferson's Ocean. That's not what I would call a starter bourbon because the bottle's $80 to $100. But this one, and this is the smaller of the regular sizes, Bulleit tends to be in the $30 to $40 price range here in Connecticut, which means it's cheaper everywhere else. And that's all I'm going to say today for the mash bill. We've got a nice bourbon here and a really fun Frontier game to match with our Frontier whiskey. That's the mash bill. We'll see you next time, everybody.